here. Hey, what's up? Edwin Canistracci here. Just doing a quick spur of the moment nighttime video. I was just on a kick. I was just listening to one of my all-time favorite heavy metal albums, Death Penalty by Witchfinder General, and I thought, hell, I haven't done another new wave of British heavy metal video, so I'm gonna do one right now. Part 3. That's right, Part 3. New wave of British heavy metal, and we're doing Witchfinder General. So yeah, the first time I hit two really big bands, Def Leppard and Iron Maiden. Well, now it doesn't always have to be about the big bands. Let's give a little love to a lesser known act. So anyway, this Witchfinder General, a lot of people don't know who they are, especially outside the heavy metal community. They only had initially with the original lineup, they only had 2 full albums in the early 80s, and they're fairly underground. I got turned on to them when I first did my deep dive into the new wave of British heavy metal, like around the mid zeros, the mid 2000s, whatever you call those things. And they are from Stourbridge, England. Stourbridge, England. Don't know much about the place. I guess it's kind of maybe on the rural side. I don't know, but that's just the vibe I kind of get from these guys. And they start off with an EP, the Soviet Invasion EP, and which is kind of odd because it's not quite what they're not like a political band or anything. It's not really done it's not really a political song, Soviet Invasion. It's more like kind of Red Dawn or like a Cold War kind of horror story kind of thing. It's not really, that serious. And that's the thing, for the most part, this is a fun band, even though they are cited as one of the originators of doom metal, which is a subgenre of heavy metal, you might know. But really, doom metal is really kind of just began with Black Sabbath. And of course, you can't talk about this band without talking about Black Sabbath, but we're going to get more into that with the next album. But right, this first EP, Russian Invasion, it's Soviet Invasion. Sorry, not Russian Invasion. Soviet Invasion. It's all right. It's cool. I like the little acoustic guitar in the beginning. I like the lo-fi, grungy, fuzzy guitar work. You can hear the Sabbath influence here. The next song, Rabies, isn't so bad. R.I.P. Great song. This is like a quasi live version. There is pretty much just sounds like the studio version with some fake crowd noise, and that's a great song, but I'm not going to talk about that until we get to the next album, the first album, Death Penalty. You can tell I've been drinking a little bit, but it's all right. That's the way to talk about Witchfinder General. You shouldn't talk about this band sober. Anyway, so 1982, Death Penalty, one of my all-time favorite heavy metal albums. This album is awesome. As you can see from the album cover, this is an awesome album. That's one of the things that attracted me. At first, I heard there was a band called Witchfinder General, and I knew that's a great name of a band. And I didn't even know at the time. I found out because of the band that was a old Vincent Price movie from 1968. And so I went and discovered that movie, and that movie's great. That's a great old British horror movie, Witchfinder General, starring Vincent Price. Great movie. Highly recommend it. Really badass. I love that late 60s, early 70s kind of hammer horror. This isn't hammer horror, but it's that kind of style and that pastoral kind of witchy horror movie from the 60s, 70s. I love that shit. So, and Vincent Price is cool. So you should definitely check out that movie. And so that gave them the inspiration for their band name. And also there's the song, which we'll get to later on. But just like Black Sabbath had, was named after the Mario Bava film, Black Sabbath, which is also a great movie. So Death Penalty, the cover is very controversial. It was controversial in England, and it's the thing people most talk about probably with the band is this album cover. It was a British playmate and a glamour model, Joanne Latham. I Googled some of her pictures, and whoa. Anyway, so that's the album cover. And, some people might look at, and I apologize. I apologize for having to censor it, but, it's if you want to see the real album cover, go Google it, because I don't want to get this video banned by YouTube. So I had to censor it. But the album cover itself is not censored, and you can find it on Google. And, some people might look at that album cover and say, hey, that's sexist. But it's not sexist because that is actually a historically accurate portrayal of witch finding generals and what they would do. So that is a historically accurate portrayal of a witch finding general scenario. So you can't argue against history. That's just the sad truth. That's what happened to those poor witches. Anyway, so great album cover. And this first song, one of my all-time favorite Witchfinder General songs, Invisible Hate. Man, this song's epic. Begins with the acoustic, kind of like the vibe I was saying from those old British horror movies, kind of folky, kind of pastoral, little acoustic guitar, different shades like Sabbath used to do. They used to do that, the little acoustic stuff. And then boom, hits into the song, sludgy, great guitar work. The guitarist, Phil Cope, he complained about the production, didn't think it was so great. I think it's great. I love the production. I love the rawness. And the song's so great. And I think my favorite part about this song is sex, drugs, rock and roll, and beer. And then he just starts going, give me beer, give me my beer, my beer. It's so catchy. And he's just singing about drinking beer. Just singing about drinking beer. It's so damn cool. And Zeeb Parks, that's his name. The lead singer is Zeeb Parks. This guy, he's cool. He had that quality, like I was saying in one of my other videos, like Ozzy Osbourne, where what was so special about Ozzy and why I really connect with him, it's just why I think a lot of people connect with Ozzy, is he just like sounds like a bloke, like a regular guy, like a messed up guy and kind of spacey and kind of like possessed at times, but not like a guy that's always possessed, like a guy from a factory town in England, I kind of possessed. Like there's just something really relatable to Ozzy, and there's not much. He's not try hard, Ozzy doesn't sound try hard. He's just doing it. I mean, his vocals got increasingly better throughout the '70s. I mean, his vocals are amazing. Say on Sabotage, which I think is his vocal peak, but he never came off like it wasn't just natural and organic. And that's the thing. Ozzy just sounded like a regular guy. He just sounded like a regular guy. You could connect with him. And Zeeb has that kind of quality. He's no Ozzy. I'm not going to tell you he's as great a singer as Ozzy Osbourne is, but he has that vibe. He captures that feeling of just being kind of this kind of scrappy bloke, this guy who's the troublemaker in the town, but late at night gets kind of sulky with a few drinks. He's a character, and it comes through, and he's really relatable, and he's cool, and this, for the most part, there hasn't been too many singers, in my opinion. Like I don't feel Ozzy's been that emulated, even though everyone loves Ozzy and Sabbath. Definitely, Tony's guitar sound has been very highly emulated, as not just by Witchfinder, but lots of bands. But I don't think there's too many vocalists that have that kind of quality. I think Bobby Liebling from Pentagram, a great band. I think he has that quality. I think Zeeb has that quality. I would say maybe Wino. Yeah, definitely Wino from St. Vitus and his band The Obsessed. Wino's band The Obsessed, great band. They have that kind of quality too, and Zeeb definitely has it, and it's special. It's one of the things that gives this band a lot of that great Sabbath personality, like in a real way. And there's not too many bands that just capture, like, this is the thing too. People say, ooh, they're doom metal, and yeah, there's an element. There's definitely a doom metal element, but yeah, they sound like they dig deeper than that. Like a lot of doom bands you listen to sound like they just really just focus on like the first three Black Sabbath albums, and that's it. But what I love about this band is that they sound like pretty much most of at least like the first six Black Sabbath albums they've listened to, and that's really how you should do it. If not, how you should listen even more than that. By the way, then Invisible Hate's great, epic song. Used to always be my favorite Witchfinder General song. These days, it might be another one on this album. Then Free Country. Man, Free Country kicks ass. This is a faster, more upbeat song. I love this song. And he says, let's trip on LSD. It's great, great stoner rock. It's got that groove. Phil's guitar work. But he also played bass on this album. But he came up with a pseudonym, and they changed bassists a lot and drummers and used studio musicians. Pretty much the only consistent two guys were Phil on guitar and Zeeb on vocals. So that's essentially who the band was. So, but this song, Free Country Kicks Ass, Death Penalty, great doom metal. Also, kind of has a touch of that kind of like Sabotage era Sabbath, a little like a great underrated Sabbath song, Thrill of It All, has a little bit of that Thrill of It All vibe. But you know what has even more of a Thrill of It All vibe? No Stayer. Man, love No Stayer. I was really kicking it to this song this evening, and that's when I realized No Stayer is now my favorite Witchfinder General song. I love No Stayer. It starts off a lot of changes and kind of does that same thing that Thrill of It All does. It has these different parts and then just gets into this really badass groove, this great riff. And I love the expression "no stayer," and it's about how he's a guy, he'll love him and leave him, he'll party with him on a Saturday night, sleep before him, and then he's out the next day. And we've heard countless rock stars, sing lyrics like this, but never come up with a turn of phrase like "no stayer." I really like that a lot. That's a good phrase. And a great song, Witchfinder General. On the Witchfinder General. Badass tune. Love it. This is actually one of the songs where they almost have a little bit of their own sound. They're not like entirely Sabbath ripoffs or clones. They got a little bit of their own thing going. And this is a song that has that. Burning a Sinner, which was, I believe, their first single, which is great. R.I.P. And this is, I prefer this version to the one that was on Soviet Invasion, because who needs that fake crowd stuff? It's just better. And this is this is total like master of reality Sabbath. And man, it's got that riff. And this riff is, whoa, like how's this Phil Cope guy, he studied those guitar riffs, those Tony Iommi guitar riffs. He studied them, and but I mean, he's not totally ripping him off. He's coming close to it, but hell, man, I love, look right here. I love Sabbath. So this guy captured it in the guitar tone. And this sounds like it could have been recorded in the early 70s, more so than the early 80s. I mean, I think that's another reason why they might have not gone to be as big as some of the other new wave British heavy metal bands, because they had such a kind of, at that time in the early 80s, they would probably sound like retro before it became a thing, before you had this kind of doom metal renaissance kind of that started a little bit in the underground in the 90s and then kept growing throughout the 2000s. And then of course everyone started loving Sabbath again in a big way in the 90s. And grunge itself was somewhat, it was actually pretty heavily influenced by Sabbath. So, but at the time in the early 80s, this would have been like kind of not that fashionable. They probably were seen as, this is like old stoner hippie rock, or that's probably how like punks and other new wave of British heavy metal bands might have thought of them. But now it's actually aged better than, I wouldn't say other. I mean, new wave of British heavy metal for the most part has aged. Almost all those bands have aged pretty well, because there's something very authentic about the music, very raw and straight from the gut. But I think especially Witchfinder General, and they're definitely one of my favorite new wave British heavy metal bands, mainly because of this album. I think it's aged. I mean, it could have been recorded in like 1972, 1982, 1992, 2002. Maybe 2022 if we're all still around, and I think we will be. But man, masterpiece. If you're a fan of Sabbath, if you're a fan of doom metal or stoner metal, stoner rock, whatever you want to call it, it's rock and roll to me. If you love that stuff and you haven't heard this album, just buy it. Just buy it. Be cool and just buy it. You don't even have to sample it. Trust me, it's good. Maybe the next one, sample first, but you definitely have to get this one. Death Penalty is a masterpiece. I love it. So then we get to their second album, Friends of Hell. Also kind of a cool, sexy, maybe sexist, maybe sexy, I don't know, Spinal Tap cover with these nurses being attacked. But it's not quite as explicit as the first one. I believe that's one of the nurses is the same model from Death Penalty. And there's a little bit, I'll say a little bit, because I do really like this album a lot. I don't love it, but I like it a lot. I think it's a really good album. Not great, but good. There's a bit of a sophomore slump here. Doesn't have quite the same impact. And even though there's still a very heavy Sabbath influence, it's a little less doomy. It's a little less like they're trying to branch out. And sometimes it works and sometimes, it's all right. There's nothing really bad. There's only one song on this album that I think is bad, which does really bring it down a bit. But everything else I do like or love. It starts off great with Love on Smack, great upbeat song. Now, this almost sounds like, hey, this isn't just Ozzy era. This almost sounds like they were have been listening to, which would have been at that time fairly recent, Dio era Sabbath, because kind of like those Dio albums always open up with a really fast, upbeat track, like Neon Nights, and Turn on the Night, and even Born Again, which was post Dio but still close to that time period with Trashed, also was a track like that. And this is like a track like that, like it's real upbeat and just kind of, even though it's smack, which you would think that would kind of be a slow song, but this sounds more like coked up, and it's a great rocker. Last Chance is all right, kind of back to the more traditional 70s kind of Sabbath kind of sound. It's good. It's a good track. Not great music. Now this is where they really do something a little different. This sounds like, if you're looking at the timeline, 1983 looks like they're trying to create a kind of Quiet Riot, like Twisted Sister kind of anthem, kind of a more raw, stripped down version of an anthem like that. But it's definitely them trying to create that kind of anthem song, and I believe it was a single from this album, but it didn't really take off, and it's not that good. It's all right. I mean, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun and dumb. I want music. Blah, blah, blah. It's all right. Friends of Hell though blows it away. Friends of Hell's one of the maybe that is the best track on the album. Yeah, I think that's my favorite song on the album, the title track. Great, and again a little like Dio, more of a Dio era Sabbath song, because this, and not, I don't think this is a coincidence with Hell in the title. It's a little like the at least the second part reminds me of Heaven and Hell, where you have that awesome bass breakdown, because there's like an awesome bass breakdown here and guitar solo, which is kind of similar. But I really love that. Requiem for Youth is a really great song. I really like that song too. Shadow Images. I Lost You. Okay, that's the one bad song. It's a ballad. It's like kind of just a full-fledged sappy ballad. Like it's not like Sabbath, like Planet Caravan or Isolation or anything like that, or even Changes. It's and I think it also shows this song displays Zeeb's his lacking as a vocalist. Like for the most part, he sounds cool. I really love Zeeb's vocals, but you hear his limitations on this song because he just sounds kind of tone deaf, and kind of, it just doesn't really work. I don't think this is the type of song that really works with him. Like if they had done something more trippy, like a Planet Caravan, like if they put an effect on his vocal and made it more of a druggy kind of ballad, I think Zeeb could totally do that. Like he sings a little bit in the beginning acoustic part of Invisible Hate, and he sounds cool then. So I think he could do a softer song. I just think not like a sappy love song like that, like this song, and it's just kind of a drag on the album. And you're like, but everything else is great. And then Quietus, which is badass, and then followed by the Quietus reprise. But Quietus is a really cool song. That's a very Sabbathy, more traditional doom metal kind of song, and that's great. And it ends it, on a good note, and it's good. Like even though I do think this album is not as great as Death Penalty, I feel like this shouldn't have been the end. Like, you hear it and it goes, oh yeah, it's a little bit of the sophomore slump, but not so much that I didn't think, like, I wouldn't be excited for a third album if they did it. And it's like, it's too bad that I don't know too much about why they imploded. Unfortunately, Phil and Zeeb, like, something happened between these dudes and they didn't want to work together again. And that was it. The band was done after that. So just after 2 albums, the band's done. Like Friends of Hell felt like it would have been that kind of transitional second album. Third album probably would have been even more original and kind of their own sound, and it probably would have been a really great album. I just get that vibe because these guys really had the goods. Phil had the guitar riffs, he could knock them out, and Zeeb had personality and was a cool lyricist. So I feel these guys would have evolved into something, and hell, even if they just kept on making Sabbathy kind of stuff, that would have been great. It'd be all right for me. So, but unfortunately, the band broke up. But at least we got 2 albums from them, and one of them, the first one, Death Penalty, is a masterpiece in my opinion, and you have to have it. And if you love that album, definitely get Friends of Hell too. You might as well have both of them, and there are some cool songs on that, definitely. The only there was a reunion. Well, it wasn't a reunion. It was just Phil Cope again, the guitarist, and they got a new singer. That happened. I think it was in 2008. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 2008, and the album was called Resurrected. And that's a really frustrating album because The music's all good. The music's great. Actually, the music's great. It's not. It's definitely locked into just the doom metal side. Like we don't have the thrill of it all side, or the kind of anthems from the early '80s side that you could hear in Friends of Hell. Like it's just focused on the doom metal side because that's, I guess, that by that point that would have been a little more fashionable in the metal underground to do that. And so but if you're going to have just a straight up doom metal album, but again, Phil was bringing the riffs. The riffs were great. I even like the drumming. Some people complain about the drummings, but they think they're too chaotic. I think it's cool. It's jazzy. It's like, Bill Ward stuff. I really like it. The big problem is the new singer that they got. The new singer is horrible. No offense, he might be a nice guy. I don't know. I just know he's not a really good singer. He's got he's not even like singing in a cool, like kind of, he's not singing like in a doom metal style, or like, I mean, I'm not saying like you would want a Zeeb clone or an Ozzy clone, but something that's in the ballpark. And this guy ain't singing like that at all. And he just, and the mixes doesn't do him any favors too, because like they got him really high in the mix, plus it's very dry sounding, like they don't put any effects on his voice, and this guy needed some effects on his voice. And unfortunately it just really brings the album down, which I think otherwise, I think if they had, even if they couldn't get Zeeb again, I feel like if they just got a better lead vocalist, which, how, I don't know how hard it would have been to find some guy to sing better than this guy. It's pretty, but for whatever reason, they Phil picked this guy and it ruined the album. So unfortunately, and I don't, and pretty much everyone else agrees, like no one likes this singer, and it didn't really take off, So that was it. So that was unfortunate. Too bad, because there were some really cool music on that album. Too bad it's ruined by the singer. But hell, nothing could ruin the first two Witchfinder General albums, and again, especially Death Penalty. Get that album. It's great. It's a doom metal classic, but hell, I think they transcend just doom metal. I think it's just a great heavy metal classic. Even I'd say sometimes hard rock. Just great music. Like, I'm not one of these guys. Yeah, if you probably know, if you've watched some of my other videos, I don't get obsessed with all these metal subgenres. Like, ooh, that's grindcore, or that's black metal, or that's death metal, or that's, Swedish polka, whatever metal. I don't care. It's rock and roll, like Billy Joel said. It's all rock and roll to me. But sometimes you got to, you know, describe to people what it sounds like, especially when you make videos like this. So that's when I gotta go, okay, I guess it's more like doom metal, and this is more like this, and this is more thrash, and you gotta put labels on things. You gotta put labels on things, or else, we can't. It's about communication. But when it's about communication, it's fine. But when it's about bullshit, ooh, I'm trying to be so cool because I know this kind of subgenre of music. That's when it's, jerk off city. Anyway, so I'm getting drunk. This was Witchfinder General. I got my beer, my beer, and I'm probably I don't know, get rock out, listen to some more tunes, and tomorrow I might, or the next day, do a Whitesnake video because I got this new Whitesnake record that I like a lot. Another great British hard rock band, heavy metal band. Definitely not doom metal. Whitesnake is definitely not doom metal, but the dude metal. That's what I think they are. Anyway, and I'm a dude. Later.